This is Dan Meyer, the RCR Wireless News, and today we are joined by Mykola Konrad, who's the Vice President of Product Management and Marketing at Sonus, to talk to you a bit about the company. So, hey, Mick, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
No problem. It's great to be here with you.
Great. Well, let's start off with, let's get a little insight into your current product portfolio. I mean, obviously, you guys have been dealing with this virtualization world here for quite some time, and maybe get a little update on kind of where you are today and maybe with the progress you guys have made over the past several months there in your product portfolio.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot for the question. So, one of the things we're really proud of here at Sonus is that we, at the end of last year and coming into this year, we virtualized our entire product portfolio. So that means our session border controllers, which is what we're most known for, as well as our policy server, our element management system, as well as our diameter router, and Velos, which is our SDN product. All of those are now virtualized, and that means that they can be instantiated on a variety of hypervisors, KVM, VMware, even Hyper-V. And then also, not only can they be instantiated on a variety of hypervisors, they can be instantiated on public clouds environments, such as the Amazon public cloud or Microsoft's Azure. People might think that that's not a big deal, but there really is a difference between being able to run an instance of a session border controller in a VMware environment versus being able to run an instance of a session border controller in the Amazon cloud environment. They are different platforms.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, good point.
And so we're very proud of that, and that's really what we're focusing on now. We took all of our base software, moved it into being able to run on a bunch of virtual platforms, a bunch of different virtual environments, and now what we're working on is working on specific with customers to actually deploy these things in their environments.
Very interesting. Well, can you, I guess maybe just some use cases for this, because I know I've talked to a lot of operators, and that seems to be kind of where they're at today, is trying to really figure out how does this make sense in our environment, and what are some good examples of how we can actually use this to kind of advance our own virtualization platform. So how, maybe some use cases where you've actually been able to work with operators on this.
So we've seen a lot of different things, and it's a great question. And I think a lot of it depends on the operator and the service provider themselves and where they are on the curve of moving to virtualization. So what we've seen is that you can go all in, somebody like an AT&T, where they've gone in and they're completely redoing the domain 2.0, and they're trying to put in, and let's take it from a Sonus perspective, virtual SBCs and virtual policy servers everywhere they can, and they're actually running. They'd be running it on their own private cloud environment with their own orchestration, their own hypervisor, and they've orchestrated all themselves. So you see that as a use case where a provider is being very aggressive in trying to completely redo their entire network and move from a traditional hardware-based architecture to a completely next-generation cloud-based virtual network. And that's great. And there's a few providers that are doing that and jumping all in. What we've seen a lot of use cases are around virtual CPE, where service providers are saying, hey, I can take an SBC and I'm offering SIP trunking. And right now, I take an appliance-based SBC and I ship it to my customer and I plug in a SIP trunk to it, and it does what, it provides security, provides interworking, makes my SIP service work for that customer. Is there a way that I can take and ship my customer a server that has VMware on it or KVM on it and run an SBC on there, plus potentially also run a few other things on there? So now that I still have to ship a box, but now that box can do multiple things. So it makes my life more efficient, therefore lowers my costs. Right? So we're seeing that use case. Another use case we're seeing in this world of NFV, along the same lines of, hey, I'm offering SIP trunks to my enterprise customers. And the way I do it today is I ship a box, I ship a SBC appliance. Maybe I want to get out of the box shipping business completely and say, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate an instance of an SBC in my data center for you, Mr. Customer. The connection between you and me for the SIP trunk is over some MPLS circuit. On this side of it is, well, on your side of it, Mr. Customer, is your Cisco router or your Juniper router, and it's terminating an MPLS connection. On our side of it, we're going to instantiate an SBC that is just for you, and it is passing packets and protecting you on our side of the cloud. So it's really a cloud-based SBC. It's an NFV-based SBC. That is a great, those two use cases we're starting to see a lot of. It's an easy way for customers to dip their toe into the water and get familiar with this concept of hypervisors, how to manage them, how to orchestrate instantiations of an NFV instance, right? Because there are a lot of surround around this when you move into this world. And if you start somewhere like that, so that's a great bunch of use cases around this whole virtual CPE. Another set of use cases around geographic expansion. So customers that say, listen, I'm a service provider here in the United States. I want to expand to Germany. But I'm not sure. Am I really, how big is the market there? It may work, it may not. And so rather than buying a lot of space and racks and shipping a lot of appliances over there, I'm going to put in a couple servers because my traffic's going to be low in the beginning anyway. Just a bunch of servers. I'm going to run virtual SBC, and I might even pipe that back to a data center back in the States, but the SBC can do all the edge protection and route calls at the edge with maybe with the Sonus policy server sitting on that same server. And I can then test out the market, run some low volume of calls, and then as things pick up, I can then make a decision. Do I keep going in a virtual environment there, or do I move to an appliance-based environment, depending on a lot of performance factors, or depending on my own internal environment and how quickly I'm moving to an overall orchestratable virtual environment within my network. So that's another use case around targeted geographic expansion. Now, the last thing that we're seeing, which is at the forefront where we're moving to, that's something very exciting for us, is in this concept of micro-segmentation and microarchitectures. So we're seeing service providers take a application, what used to be a monolithic application like a session border controller or even a policy server, and breaking that up into constituent parts. And with things like, I just need the security aspect of an SBC, or I just need the transcoding aspect of an SBC, or I just need the interworking aspect of the SBC. So I'm going to pass all of these packets through just this particular aspect of the session border controller. And what might happen is dynamically, as my traffic changes throughout the day, I might start to say that, wow, I need a lot more network policing and a lot more security right now because I'm getting attacked. There's a DOS attack happening. So I need to put more CPU power and more workloads underneath that particular computational ability, right, which is the SBC capability to override security. But later in the day, maybe I'm not getting attacked as much, but suddenly I need a lot of transcoding. So now I'm going to increase all the CPU cycles under that. And so we're this whole concept of decomposing these monolithic applications into just a little piece parts that you need and being able to scale each one of them independently, yet coherently in a way where you can manage your network dynamically. That's something that, now that's a little further up the field. That is a use case, right? But that is a little further on. But that's something that we're seeing, and that's where we're moving to. Something we're very excited about in our SBC architectures, in our SBC cloud-based architectures.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because that does seem like those have been kind of a lot of the hype around this move towards virtualization has been kind of these types of use cases where people can actually scale things up and down rapidly and micro-segment things and really take their network apart really and kind of do what they need to do with certain parts. And it sounds like we're to that point. You guys obviously with your move towards virtualizing all of your platforms are kind of almost to that point now where this is a reality now. It's not just something we've been talking about for years and years. It's actually, we're kind of almost there at this point.
Yeah, I think what's happened is over the last few years, service providers have been pushing a lot of vendors to move in certain directions. We Sonus have been taking that very seriously, and we feel that we're there. We believe we are ahead of a lot of our competition in this space in this particular instance. Like, I'm not sure if you talk to many other people in the SBC or policy server space, they're talking about micro-segmentation and would be able to show you anything. But we are moving very rapidly in that space. And again, it's based on where we see the market going. But we are very excited about it. We think it's really going to change the industry and allow people to be much more efficient with their use of networks and really compete as a service provider, as an operator, in the mobile world, fixed line world, the IMS world. versus some of the over-the-top players that they are going to be competing against, right? If a lot of the big service providers in the world are really starting to take notice of people like Google, people like Apple, and potential the communication capabilities being offered over their clouds. And how do you compete against that? Well, you have to move into this new world.
Yeah, very interesting. And as you mentioned earlier too, it does seem like depending on where the carrier is at in their virtualization evolution, I guess they are kind of taking bits and pieces from what you guys are able to offer. And obviously, like you mentioned, AT&T is one of those carriers that's kind of pretty far advanced. But there's a majority of the operators out there are still just getting into this. And to be able to go to somebody, it seems like, who has a pretty advanced platform in place that is ready to kind of scale to what they need, it seems like that will allow them to catch up rather rapidly, and again, take advantage of the fact that this ecosystem seems to be advancing at a pretty good clip over the past several months, and obviously past years as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the our capability to provide what is now needed is there.
Yeah.
And it's giving, and not only in a lab environment, but also with proof points of customers actually having deployed it, which makes other service providers now, the ones that are maybe not at the bleeding edge of adoption, just in their internal culture, but maybe a little bit, they're not the mainstream yet, because this technology is not mainstream yet. Sure. It's not bleeding edge anymore, but it's not mainstream. It's in this early adopter phase, but maybe they're the late early adopters. They are now very much interested in this and looking at all the different use cases that we have out there and seeing which ones do they want to do. And it's a great way you start off with one and you gradually expand your network around it. And that's a great way of making use of your installed base of assets. Right? There's a lot of stuff there that's depreciated. You don't want to just turn it off in one day.
Yeah.
Reuse what you have while you grow into your new areas, wherever your business happens to be growing.
Yeah, obviously the important part of that as well is going to be the orchestration aspects as well, to make sure that the legacy and the new can work together. And again, there's so much advancement. It seems happening at such a good clip among those parts of it of the ecosystem that it's a good, again, for someone, I've only been covered for a couple of years, but to kind of see this progress starting to really happen out there in the real world, and you guys obviously been working on it for a while there, but it's good to see that progress happening out there.
Yeah, no, we're very happy with it, and we're very proud of where we are at this point.
Sure. Well, I guess now looking through 2016, I should kind of mention you guys are kind of looking a bit the whole micro-segmentation of the market, kind of really slicing things up even more for operators. And I know, as you mentioned also earlier too, a lot of focus on cloud and security this year too. As you look through the next several months here, what's going to be the big movements for you guys? And obviously, like you said, there are some things you're working on already. Do you expect, I'm guessing, some good progress on those, and where do you kind of see those perhaps evolving over the next few months?
So from an NFV perspective, there's what we see and what we're going to be talking about a lot is this move to using GPUs, graphic units, as transcoding resources for these really deep, really hard workloads that some of our SBCs have to perform, which is in essence transcoding from G711 to G729, or from a wideband codec to a narrowband codec. Those kind of things can be done more efficiently in a cloud platform if you start making use of some of the GPU farms that are out there, like, for example, the Amazon cloud that's now starting to offer GPUs. You're going to start seeing that coming from us, of how we can allow operators not just to micro-segment and micro-architect their networks from interworking to transcoding to security aspect, but also where and what is the best resource in which to do the transcoding, and how do you make use of all of these distributed cycles out there, CPU cycles, in other people's clouds to potentially do some of this hard work for you on an as-needed basis. So again, that's something that's really exciting. That's going to be coming. That's something you're going to hear us talking a lot about over the next 6 months. Another thing that it's not quite NFV related, but it is SDN related, so pertinent to the topic here, and pertinent for our service provider friends out there, is our offering around a network as a service, which our platform is called Velos, and how we enable our service provider customers to offer networking as a service to their customers. That's something that we're seeing a lot of in the market. We have a few customers today, and we're rapidly signing up new ones, which allows a service provider that has data services to their enterprises to allow their customer to come up and say, hey, I just want to buy a burst of network capability. For tomorrow, I'm doing a big stream with my CEO. I need a lot of bandwidth dedicated just for 2 hours tomorrow. I don't want to pay for the whole month, but just for 2 hours for tomorrow. These kind of flexible bandwidth requirements, these kind of things are being enabled through a lot of the SDN platforms that are out there. And so we're very happy that we have an offering in that segment. It's something you're going to hear us talking about a lot over the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that Velos product, I was reading a bit up on that as well. And it does seem like that is an amazing product because it does, like you said, it's able to kind of really let operators, again, just really fine tune their network resources and what they can offer to a customer. I mean, to such a minute detail. It seems like, again, looking back over the past several years, to be able to do that just seems, again, obviously, virtualization allows for a lot of this, but to be able to offer that in the market just seems like an amazing advancement that operators can actually bring to the market now.
Yeah, I know. So we're seeing that a lot of the service providers where competition in the data space is very intense.
Yep.
APAC, parts of Europe, they really resonate with this because the ability to take our product and then offer this service to their customers is a competitive differentiator for them. Right? That's how they are going to get more market share for their services out in those markets. It's actually, interestingly, in a more regulated markets or more developed markets where the competition may not be as advanced, the service providers are not as interested in the differentiation at this point, though we believe that will change.
Yeah, it does seem like you're right. Even in those markets there, it's at some point, the way things are advancing, they're going to have to adjust their thinking probably a little bit. And this seems like this is going to be just kind of the way of the future at some point. And again, the timing for all this seems so great too, because, all the talk about IoT and 5G and all these other things that are coming out, being able to have these scalable, flexible platforms behind there supporting all this is going to be key to all these things. I mean, these things aren't going to work unless operators can be this flexible and agile in the back office. So the timing of all this seems to be working out somehow very, very well.
It does. No, it is the right time because, imagine a use case where I'm a company and my business is to have all these medical devices that all happen to need to report their data between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the evening because that's when potentially things are happening. Well, you want to make sure you've guaranteed bandwidth at a large amount of burst bandwidth at that time. So your service provider needs to be able to give that to you, but you don't need that bandwidth at noon. So service providers are going to be forced in an IoT world, an Internet of Things world, into these types of services. And we believe that we're well positioned there. And you're going to hear a lot of talk about Velos from Sonus over the next 6 months or so.
That sounds good. Well, again, we definitely appreciate the insight on this, and obviously we'll look forward to kind of the news coming out throughout the year as well. And obviously the Velos products is going to be a big part of that. So, but hey, Mick, we definitely appreciate the insight today. Thanks so much for that, and hopefully we can touch base again soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Dan.
All right, thanks.